Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, available on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One.
Welcome to the Feel Good Podcast with Kimberly Snyder. Our goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and healing. Feeling good is about accepting who we are and living from a place of inner peace in our perfectly imperfect lives. Every week, we provide you with interviews with top experts in their field to support you in living your most beautiful, inspired, and joyful life with a focus on health, wellness, meditation, and spirituality, and personal empowerment. I'm your host, Kimberly Snyder, founder of the lifestyle brand Saluna, New York Times bestselling author and nutritionist. Now let's get started. Hi, beauties. Welcome back to our Monday interview podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. I am fascinated by her work. Her name is Eileen McKusick, and she is an award-winning author, researcher, inventor, educator, and speaker on the effects of audible sound on the human body and Biofield. She has a modality called Biofield tuning, which is a groundbreaking sound therapy modality. And again, we're going to get into it. It's just so interesting. It's so fascinating. It's another way we can really impact our wellness and our health and our vitality and our energy through the effect of sound. So super cool. Before we jump in, though, I want to give a quick shout out to our fan of the week, who is Alexandra the Great. Great name. She writes, I've been listening to this podcast for a long while now, and it never fails to lift me up. Kimberly is a wealth of knowledge, and you can feel her love for her audience come through the podcast. I definitely recommend it to anyone looking to better themselves. Alexandra the Great, thank you so much for being our fan of the week. It makes me so happy to feel that you can feel the love. I love doing this. I love connecting with you guys so much. I send you so much love, Alexandra. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Sending you a big virtual hug. Hope that we get to meet in person or in the circle sometime soon. And beauties, for your chance to also get shouted out as the fan of the week, please take a moment or so out of your day and leave us a review on iTunes. It's free, it's easy, and it will just take you a moment or so. Please also make sure that you subscribe to our Feel Good podcast, clicking the subscribe button on iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you listen to our podcast. And that way you keep that connection. You stay motivated every week. It's a really great way to keep the lifestyle up and to make sure you don't miss out on anything that could be life-changing for you as well. All right. So all that being said, we have the amazing Eileen on the line with us. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, thanks for having me. It sounds like a fun podcast you have going on here.
We have a lot of fun. We have interesting people like yourself every Monday, and then Thursday we do Q&A with the community just to hear what everybody's vibing on, everybody's thinking about. As always, Eileen, the guests that we bring on are people that I have some kind of connection to. I'm interested in their work. I'm interested in what they're doing in the world, their angle, what they're teaching us. And so I came across your work, I think, through a mutual friend or something. And I'm always looking for ways that we can impact our body and our wellness. When it comes to sound, I think most of us think of music. We recently had a yogi on called Govind Das, who was talking about the power of mantra in sound. So to kick it off, can you just give us, and I know this is a big concept, we'll break it down a lot, but just like an overview of how much sound can really impact our energy and our well-being?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really great analogy to think of your body like an instrument. And, when you're in tune, you are experiencing a state of health. And when you're out of tune, and you can get very badly out of tune, as you know, your health starts to break down. That, even though we appear solid, we're really just a collection of vibrations, that every single organ has its own rhythm and its own tonal sweet spot. And, it's more like a symphony, I think, than just an instrument, because we have so many, our heart has a rhythm and our brain waves have a rhythm and our digestion and our lungs, everything is very rhythmic. And so when we're in a state of health and well-being, like, oh, those rhythms are groovy and everything is like going on in a good way. But if we take hits, if we grew up in a traumatic kind of environment, or, just life kind of takes you down and sucks the life out of you, in a lot of ways. And people get, through no fault of their own, pretty bashed up and out of tune. And then their health starts to follow that. And
when you say out of tune, Eileen, do you mean like our rhythms get off? Like as far as like our circadian rhythms or our enzymes or hormones? Like, do you mean on any level we just start to feel out of whack? On
any level. Like just a good example, in our work, Biofield Tuning, we do a thing called an adrenal rhythm reset. Found is that when people have been under too much stress for too long, their adrenal rhythm gets too high and too fast. And it's just running all the time. Instead of like doing these short bursts that they're kind of designed for, they just kind of get stuck like a toilet with a sticky handle that they right?
Constantly like low grade, just chronic stress going on.
And so, and once they get into that rhythm, it's really hard for them to get themselves out. And so what we do is we just introduce a pure tone, towards the body. And we find the adrenal rhythm. It's called the cocktail party effect. And we come in with a tuning fork and we're listening for, that adrenal rhythm. And then when we find it, we do something that I call lock phase with that rhythm. And we just reflect back to the adrenals, the fact that they're, not in their harmonious sweet spot. And the body has this amazing ability to use something as simple as a tuning fork to hear itself and actually recalibrate and sort of auto tune.
Is that similar, like when you do a sound bath and you're in a room with all the gongs and the crystals, is it really helping to reset your organs?
Yeah, I think that it's helping, just giving you feedback. And also, sound really washes through you. Sound moves through the body 4 to 5 times faster than it does through air. So there's this very big, transduction of your bones and your fluids, and everything's moving around in there. And the strong vibe of bowls or gongs will just kind of override, whatever you've got going on. These big waves are going to move through your body and like kind of reset things and help bring them into more order. So,
it's really interesting.
We can find very specific areas around your field or your body that are off rhythm or out of whack and work with them very directly. But the whole idea is the same. It's just coherence induces coherence in the body.
Have there been any clinical research on it? Is it anecdotal at this point? Is it something that's growing in popularity, this idea of sound therapy?
Yeah, there are certainly people who came before me in the 80s, like John Beaulieu and Jonathan Goldman and, other people. But it's really, I would say, in the last 3 or 4 years. When I did 96, 97, I'd be like, I'm doing sound therapy. People are like, I never heard of that. It was kind of like, it was invalidated for a lot of reasons. It sounds pretty woo-woo, I don't know what it is about, you say tuning fork, people are like, woo-woo, it's just something that you. But what I'm seeing is that knee-jerk response is really starting to shift nearly the hard sell that it was a decade ago. And
well, I think more people are open to this idea of energy. And we know that, something I write about now, we've been writing about when I started writing my first book in 2011 is the impact of our emotions on our gut health and on our bodies.
And so, as far as studies go, there's been some.
Yes, 100%.
That's why it's growing. Like the market is driving it, not any studies that are done or not done. So because people have an experience and they tell their friends and their friends have the same experience. It's a very consistent outcome with sound healing. The aim of sound healing is very simple. It's to bring people to a relaxed, present state of awareness. That's it. I'm just chilling, hanging out. I'm not in pain. I'm not fussed. I'm not freaking out. I'm just here and I'm alert and I'm curious. I'm relaxed. And maybe I'm grateful, to be in a coherent state. That's all anybody wants to be in. And I think that most of us don't have the freedom for that because of money stress and time stress and inherited ancestral noise. I think a lot of the noise that people experience in their own system are consequence of living in urban areas, inheriting their parents' traumas, the cultural traumas, then they think it's them without necessarily realizing that it's been their tonal inputs and their tonal environment, which is very chaotic. It's a very incoherent, chaotic world out there. And so, we never needed, I think, sound and the coherence and sort of singularity of awareness that it can bring. We need it more than ever.
Agreed. So what would you say to, a listener here who may do some tuning work here and there, but just in daily life that could be beneficial? Do you think it's listening to, more soothing music? Do you think it's investing in a bowl or, how do you think we can make more harmonious sound coherent in from your estimation, what really impacts the body, just part of our daily experience?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I do. I live on a river. I live in a small city, but right on a river.
What state do you live in, Eileen?
I live in Burlington, Vermont.
Oh, nice, beautiful.
Yeah. But I go outside with bare feet in the grass and I listen to the birds. I don't listen to tools. Nature is just so beautiful and it's free. Try to quiet your mind and just really pay attention to the sounds of nature and just be really present. Nature is an extremely coherent field. When we simply go into a listening state, we go out of that beta overthinking and into, a more alpha brainwave state of just listening. Yeah.
So, but what would you say? And I love that. I do a beach walk every day now, Eileen, and I just love hearing the ocean. What would you say to our beauties living in the heart of Manhattan or the heart of London? What do you do if you don't have a lot of birds around? Super urban, let's say hyper urban environment.
So, I would say sing. Like one of the things that I do is that I get different verses of songs that are kind of like prayer. So right now I got a Bob Marley song, Thank You, Lord, for what you've done for me. And I will sing. I'll sing it in my mind. I'll sing it in my body. I'll sing it out loud if I can, because I think that we're much better off engaging in like devotional, uplifting, repeated, the whole idea of mantra or prayer. Because through that kind of devotion, you connect to source, you connect to something greater than yourself. You bring yourself into a state of gratitude. So you're getting, the sound, music going through you, but in that devotional way, there's a coherence and a connection that happens. And so that's super accessible too, is what are your favorite songs that make you be uplifted and, to sing those in your mind instead of the fussing and fighting, criticism and a lot of things that people do. I also kind of pray, I pray to send coherence out into the field and just send healing energy. So there's things like that make you feel good that I think uplift your electric health. But if you really want to have a tool, I don't have one next to me. But we offer a whole bunch of stuff at my website. We've got the opportunity to buy some tuning forks. So, even just striking a tuning fork, a lot of people like the 528 hertz fork, and I sell those. And you can do space clearing with those, which is kind of cool. You activate and use it kind of like a feather duster, and it can really kind of clear space, and that can shift mood. Because heavy energy does sit in
So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's just go back to general for a moment. I've been reading a lot about quantum physics recently. In the last couple of years, it's something that I'm very interested in. There's also an intersection between quantum physics and spirituality. And I think it really does put, there's a language, there's a fluency between the two. There's an overlap that I think is really interesting. And even, crystals and this idea that they're holding space for us. They're in this perfect shape and they can help us and train up when our bodies are fragmented. Some people say that fascia is the same structure as crystalline quartz. So sound, like you're talking about clearing space and clearing our body. And we're talking about the quantum field, the 0 point field, if you will. So we're saying that even, let's say something heavy happens in a room or somebody comes to your house, and you want to clear the energy, which is what I do all the time, by the way, because there's so many people in my house coming in and out. How does sound kind of how does it clear the space? Is it moving electrons? Is it moving particles? I'm just trying to grasp the root of this, because I have noticed a difference when I work with mantras, when I have really healing sound on my beach walk versus listening to something that feels more frenetic. So I just love to get your perspective of the root of how it's really influencing us.
Yeah, what's really going on? Well, so there's a few points here that I want to make, because I use a different language. I spent a lot of time studying quantum as well in an effort to try to understand it. And what I found is that I really couldn't understand it, because when we talk about quantum theory, there's actually a lot of debate within that realm about what it really means. There's all these different interpretations. because I couldn't understand quantum, and if you look it up, the definition means very tiny, which is sort of a strange definition. And I think because what I found was that there was so much confusion around what quantum really means, I decided to not use that language. And I'm not faulting you, or I'm not, anything that you shouldn't. I'm just saying the conclusion that I came to, just so we understand we're talking about the same thing. What I ended up to say is,
sorry, Eileen, if I could just say, like, for me, there's that quantum mechanics book that I don't know if you're referencing it. It does go into all the contention. For me, the biggest difference is Newtonian physics is really about, separate objects, spatial relationships. And quantum is saying there's one unified field. There's oneness. We're all connected. Everything affects everything. So that's more the line that I
agree. Everything's connected. And so the language I use for that is ether. So that's the classical term, that it's all one field and that it's connected. And when we do distance healing, we're experiencing resonance in the ether instead of quantum entanglement. Because I think what's missing in a lot of people's minds when we talk about quantum is the fact that everything is really connected and that it all really comes from one thing, is that it's all light. And it's all light that spins itself into denser and denser things. So when you bring the ether into the cosmology, to me, ether turns into plasma, and plasma turns into gas and solid and liquids. It's just sort of the classical way of looking at states of matter. And that, to me, just explains everything without having to go into all the confusion around quantum.
Sure.
Right? Sure. But I know we're talking about the exact same thing. So I just wanted to clarify our language around that.
You spend so much time on social media liking posts that are, quote, giving you life. But what if you spent time on what actually gives you life, which is your heart? Instead of scrolling your life away, let's get moving. Even walking a little bit each day will increase your lifespan. The next time you're scrolling, think about strolling instead. And here's a pro tip. If you stroll on a treadmill, you can actually scroll safely at the same time. This was a message from the American Heart Association. Make moves at heart.org. LaCroix sparkling water was developed to give health-conscious consumers refreshment, flavor, and sparkle with an innocent twist of 0 calories, 0 sweeteners, and 0 sodium. LaCroix sparkling waters are gluten-free, vegan, kosher, non-GMO. They're also Soluna and Beauty Detox friendly and environmentally friendly. LaCroix cans are perpetually sustainable and recyclable. Enjoy LaCroix sparkling water, a calorie, sweetener, and sodium-innocent beverage with nothing artificial. LaCroix is a healthier alternative for you and your lifestyle and is available nationwide. For a full list of retailers, visit lacroixwater.com.
So when we're talking about energy in a room, what is that? Is that ether? Is it plasma? Is it electrons? Is it, or even in our field, right? Because my work uses sound to move around energy in the body.
Right.
And so what is that energy, And that's been one of my big questions. Is it free electrons? Is it magnetic monopoles? Is it phonons? Right. I think that nobody really knows the answer to that question. If we were going to describe it in terms of particles, about exactly what we're moving. My feeling is that it's light of different densities. So heavy energy, when a person has heavy energy, or there's even such a thing as heavy water versus light water. And it has to do with the spin of the molecules and whether they're kind of spinning downwards or whether they're spinning upwards. So holy water is water that has been charged, electromagnetically charged, which makes it spin up, which gives it a completely different mouthfeel and taste. And it's electrified, right? And so people are always kind of throwing off energy. If you walk into a room after a fight, right?
Yeah.
And you feel the spark.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because we're electromagnetic beings and, we're giving off water and that water is charged with information. But spaces and cavities all hold memory and energy. And what I found walking around the tuning fork is that in a place where there's heavy energy, like in corners or even around doorways, the tuning fork will sound really dull and heavy because it's interacting with that sort of heavy energy that's hanging out there. And if you activate the fork a bunch and you kind of wave it around, it'll brighten it. It'll break up that pattern. It breaks it up. Just like they use sound to break up kidney stones. It's the same. Like, just the wavefront comes in and these molecules that are just sort of hanging there in the air get covered, busted up. And the pattern that's there gets cleaned out. It's like getting rid of cobwebs.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, they're using sound, ultrasound, sound therapy to break up actual matter in our bodies, which shows the power of it. It's incredible. And
so that's the same way that, like shamanic healing, when you do drums or didgeridoos or rattles around the body, it's like the way that we're using tuning forks. It's breaking up thought patterns and emotional patterns and like just vibrational patterning and resetting it, back into neutral. So you do the same thing with space clearing. You're breaking it up and you're kind of resetting it back to neutral.
Earlier you mentioned a vibration for the adrenals. Is there a different natural vibration for all the different organs in your body? Like if you're trying to break thought patterns, or you're trying to reset your gut, or you're trying to entrain your heart, like is there different sounds?
Yeah, and I think everybody's is different. I know there's some school of thought that say things like, the vibration of a healthy kidney is 139.2 hertz. But, what if you have a man who's 6'10" and 300 pounds, or a woman who's like 4'9" and 90 pounds? Is their kidney going to be the same frequency? Like, I highly doubt that. I think that every body and every organ in every body has its own tonal sweet spot.
Right.
It's a place where it's like perfectly groovy, like a well-tuned instrument. And that's what, we all have that template in us. Like within all of our own body's organizing intelligence, we have the blueprint of perfect harmony, of perfect health, of perfect geometry. It's all there. And what takes us out of that, there's two things. One is like tonal inputs from our environment, good, bad. And, people, you think about like all trauma, it's mostly sound based.
Oh, and the horns honking and just like people screaming at each other. Like it's super intense.
It's super intense, right? And that puts you in a state of like contraction and resistance. And, and then over time it creates a shutdown. And so when we get bathed in coherent sound and you go forest bathing, all of a sudden you can kind of open back up and you can relax and you can soften and you can breathe. And I think breathing is really the most important part, because when we've had a lot of bad inputs, we tend to hold our breath a lot.
Yes.
And so if you can go for weeks without food and days without water, but you can only go a few minutes without sound. Without breath.
Right.
But there's also a sound going in and out, which is interesting. But so breath is the most important part of our aliveness. And what, all of these places where we've taken hits, especially because a lot of us been trained to not speak and to not emote and to not share emotions. So we have all this sort of sound trapped in us that is just holding energy and tension and breath. And so, our work is all about opening the breath, releasing the emotions, improving the electrical flow through the body.
And sound can help with your breath work.
Yeah. Oh, so much. I think that's kind of the essence of this work. It's like, I'm using sound to get you to breathe. Because free your breath, the more free your life. That's all there is to it. Like, there's so much is all just riding right there in our diaphragms and our breathing. And the simplest thing you can do is just notice every time you're holding your breath and take a breath. And notice how your breath responds to people around you and like what you're doing with your breath. Because that has a huge degree. I don't work out or exercise, but I'm really, really strong. And part of that's from using a tuning fork that I invented called the sonic slider. But I realized that another part of it is that I'm breathing deeply and strongly a lot.
Getting into your muscles, circulation.
Yeah, exactly. It's the flow. It's a flow state. That's something that's uses anyway, because everything is flow and sound is flowing. Electricity is flowing, blood is flowing, oxygen, all that. We want to
movement.
Yeah, in movement, and in groovy, harmonious movement, that's
Eileen, I read somewhere, I think, about your work where, a lot of us talk about the chakras and the major chakras in the body, but I recall something about you saying there were like half point chakras or something like that. Can you explain this theory?
Yeah. So where you probably saw that is that I'm doing a 10-week advanced course with the Shift Network. I did a 7-week course, and now we're doing this additional course. And in the first series, we went up what we call the whole steps. So in Biofield tuning, we work with the feet, the knees, and then the 7 major chakras, just kind of in those zones of the Biofield that I've mapped. So that's
okay.
Which is like exploring the Biofield, discovering that it's sort of like it's sort of like your personal cloud, store all your, it's striated in different levels of this emotion lives here and this, so I've really kind of mapped and figured out if I hit a chaotic zone in your field, I can tell you exactly what age, what was involved, the emotions you felt. And so that's the essence of Biofield tuning is the students work with this map and they kind of, identify childhood traumas and things like that and help them to just tonally resolve and liberate the breath that's still frozen from those different experiences. Now you're going to have to remind me
of the half chakras, like the points in between. Because I've never heard that before in yoga, in Vedic philosophy. There is a lot of talk about the 7 points or the 7 churches or the 7 chakras, whatever you want to call them. But I've never heard this idea that there's half chakras.
No, exactly. So what I did was after mapping the whole steps, I got curious. I'm like, well, what about that stuff in between? Like it's a long distance from the knee to the root, like there's all those eyes in there. And I realized that there were like kind of swaths of the Biofield that I hadn't really explored with my tuning forks. And so I went off and I did started to explore them, these half step areas and discovered that. And at this point, I really learned the language of vibration. So I can hear pretty much any tone and I can tell you what it is. Like because that's what's going on in us. We're having this whole vibrational experience and we put words on it, but really it's a tonal language. And nature speaks the exact same language. Like animals and plants all have the same vibrational language. All feel fear as a pulsing, and it's just a universal vibrational language that the tuning forks reveal so beautifully. Anyway, I started to explore and discover and map these half steps and what they are. So I can just briefly go over them. They seem to be related in part to like diaphragms of sorts, because this is like the diaphragm at the top of the head. And this is sort of the diaphragm, where the brain sort of sits. But I discovered like this particular area, this half step all in here relates to your reptilian brain and like your sympathetic nervous system response.
So Eileen, for people listening and not watching this video, I'll say you're referring to the spot right underneath your nose to your chin, all around your head.
That's right. Yeah. So that's the step between like the third eye and the throat.
I see. So there's an energy center here that we don't always focus on.
Yeah, that we don't focus on. And yet when I started working in it, I discovered that held the record of like every time we'd ever have a sympathetic nervous response. So if people had something like PTSD, like this is the area where all that like triggering was encoded. And I found when I worked in this area and really worked with that, that primal brain, that it settled people's nervous systems down like crazy. And it's just this really deep relaxation. What's interesting about that spot is there's another chakra at the base of the skull where the skull joins the spine, C1. Mm-hmm. A lesser known chakra called the Alta Major, also known as the mouth of God.
Isn't it the medulla oblongata? Is that right here?
I'm talking more like in the skeletal kind of context. So, right in the, that's the...
In the groove.
Ridge, that groove.
Yeah.
Below the occiput ridge.
Yeah. I thought it was called the medulla oblongata. I'm not 100%
part of the brain.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's right where you pull here. And I say pull like Yogananda talks about meditating here. You actually pull energy into that part of your brain.
Yeah, it's that part of your brain or part of your like your top vertebrae. And so that is also known as the mouth of God, and where we actually, receive guidance, higher guidance through that zone. But you can't receive higher guidance through that zone if your sympathetic nervous system has been like upset or routinely, because it creates too much static in that particular zone of your field. And so just working in that particular half step settles down that static enough that you start to be able to, I call it my mail slot, MAIL, the little mail slots and doors that open and like notes drop in. And in my experience in like receiving guidance, it's like, feels like it's a note that drops in. And so, working in that half step makes you more attuned to that higher guidance and able to follow it, because it's always good guidance, right?
Mm-hmm. So when you're doing when you're doing the tuning forks, are you doing it right over the areas that you're trying to clear, or just doing it in general clears everything?
I start at the outer edge of the torus, which we see as gestation and then birth, and then move in towards the body, kind of reading the record of the life. So as we come in closer to the body, we come in closer to now. So if I'm like coming in, off, let's say in this half step, and I'm coming in on somebody and I hit an area where it's turbulent and the tone goes sharp, then I'm going to know that they had some kind of traumatic experience that put their sympathetic on, and I'll be able to tell if they're 60 and I'm halfway through their field, I'm going to know that happened when they were 30.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting ability. Now, I don't know if this exists like objectively. It's kind of an interesting thing, but these are just patterns that I observed over and over again, sort of timeline. And so we teach people this map and the timeline, and then they go and they start working on people, and they're able to use the map to correctly identify very specific memories. So it's very consistent. Like I could teach you to do it. I could teach you in an hour, and you'd be able to go and work on somebody and like find these spots and plot them on the map and help them resolve. Yeah.
So interesting, Eileen. Well, thank you so much. I could ask you questions all day. It's always really exciting to me when we find more levels, more tools that we can use, because I started off just working with food, and then it just kept expanding into sleep and working with the skin and meditation and spirituality. And we really do teach a full lifestyle. So I think this is really cool. I'm interested to try one of your tuning forks, Eileen, as well. And beauties, to check out more of Eileen's tools and her work, please go to her website, which is biofieldtuning.com. We will link to it directly in our show notes as well. And Eileen, your courses are on there, your tools, your packages, everything.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You can find. Yeah. And, but don't forget the really simple stuff too about breathing and grounding and listening to birds, because it can be that easy.
I love that. I love, just like the everyday things. And then those of us that want to go deeper have those tools. So thank you so much, Eileen. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing all your knowledge. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.
And beauties, thank you so much for tuning in today. We send you so much love. We will be back here Thursday for our Q&A podcast. Till then, take great care of yourself. Check out the show notes at mysoluna.com. Remember, we have daily inspiration for you as well on Instagram at @Kimberly Snyder. Sending you lots of love, beauties, and see you back here soon.
Keep the devices in your home protected from Wi-Fi threats with Xfinity XFi. If it's connected, it's protected. Now that's simple, easy, awesome. Switch to Xfinity today and get a great offer. You'll get fast speeds and the best in-home Wi-Fi experience with Xfinity XFi. And now you can get advanced security for free when you get the XFi Gateway. That's a $72 value per year. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit an Xfinity store to switch today. Restrictions apply.